So, the last time we were together, which was an hour ago, uh, I talked about the fraud case against Trump and why the penalty was appropriate. But let's talk for a second about Mar-a-Lago, because I understand Trump is saying he's been listing it at being worth $750 million. Now he's talking about it's worth $1 billion. How much do you think he paid for it? I'm always curious about these things. You should be too. Don't just get all your information from me. So how much did he pay for Mar-a-Lago? This $1 billion piece of property. $5 million. When they put it up for sale, for bid, the Post Foundation, they wanted a minimum of $20 million, and he refused to pay it. And what he said was, if you don't sell me this thing for basically nothing, I'm going to put up a giant building on that lot. Because people think Mar-a-Lago goes all the way to the beach. Well, it doesn't. First of all, there's a highway in between there, but then back from there's another piece of property, and Trump was going to buy that and build a big building on it to block Mar-a-Lago's view of the ocean. So pretty clever, but not exactly what you'd expect from a businessman with high moral values. So they sold it to him for $5 million. Then they also sold him the vacant lot, and they sold him the furnishings, and the total came to about $10 million. $10 million. Yeah. So, first place, why so low? Why couldn't they sell it to somebody else for $15 million, $20 million, $30 million? According to Trump, it's worth $1 billion. And they couldn't find anybody to pay more than the paltry nothing that Trump was offering? I mean, the houses in that area went back then for a lot more than he paid for Mar-a-Lago, which he says is worth a fortune more than any other building in Palm Beach. Well, I lived in Palm Beach in the 70s, and I can tell you, Mar-a-Lago it's nice, I've been there, but there's a lot nicer houses in Palm Beach. They may be smaller, but they're a lot nicer, a lot better views, a lot more ocean proximity, and so on. So, but that's just my opinion, that's not a fact. But these are facts. So he spent $5 million for Mar-a-Lago. Then he spent some money to build a big ballroom there, 20,000 feet. That costs money. But then he changed his designation because he wanted to take that land and break it up and put a whole bunch of little homes on there and sell them. And the neighbors raised hell about it. So finally he says, okay, if you're going to put restrictions on me, then I want to change this from my own personal residence. We're going to make it a club. So it's a combination, personal residence for him, clubhouse for which he charges membership, and so on. So it's kind of a commercial enterprise, which is, I can tell you, having lived in Palm Beach, doesn't go down real well with the most of the residents, particularly the ones around him. So I have a couple of stories for you. So first of all, why did it go for such a low price? It went for such a low price because Mar-a-Lago was built in the 1920s, not 1820s, the 1920s. And I think it would cost about $10 million to build. In the 30s, West Palm Beach, or Palm Beach County, decided, let's build an airport. Now, this was in the 30s. When I was a kid, there was no such thing as jet passenger airplanes. I remember the first time a jet military plane flew over my town where I lived in Lafayette, Indiana. Wonderful little place. And a military jet flew over, and this was like it was right after the Korean War when we started using jets, and the whole neighborhood turned out to see this jet plane flying overhead, and had this white stream coming down. And we were all excited about this jet airplane, having no hope or thought whatsoever that someday we'd actually be flying in jet airplanes and complaining about it. That's a whole different issue. I'm not going to complain right now about the last time I flew it. I'm just not going to do it because I'm too nice a person. I'm easygoing, nothing bothers me. Well, except when the news gets things wrong, which is every day. And when my dog misbehaves, which is also every day. So they decided to build an airport. Well, it was nothing. It was a tiny little sliver of a thing, and they had some private planes flying on. Fast forward When I lived in Palm Beach, West Palm Beach Airport was still a small airport. It was actually quite charming. And to get your luggage, if it was raining, you had to stand in the rain because there was no inside place for luggage to come in. It was that small. It was one stretch. You'd walk in, and there was the entire airport before your very eyes. And I actually took flying lessons there for a while. I did not do that well. You don't want to know why. You just be thankful that I never got my license. So, fast forward to, and I'm long gone. I'm living in California. And while I'm gone, behind my back, they expand the airport. It's a big airport. I mean, not big by New York standards, but it's a good size. It's a real airport. It's an international airport, and I still like it because it's small enough that you can maneuver around and not get lost with millions of people pushing you all over the place. But it's a real airport, and guess what flies in and out of it? Those jet aeroplanes they didn't have when I was a kid. Great big passenger jet aeroplanes, which we never saw. So I grew up I grew up all over the place, but part of my growing up time was on an Air Force base. I was used to having jet planes flying all over and, just barely missing our house and landing right outside the front door. I was used to it. Excuse me. But if you're not used to it, having planes fly right over your head and back all day long is pretty annoying. So what happened was, the Marjorie Merriweather Post passed on. She left Mar-a-Lago to the federal government. She wanted it to be used to host foreign dignitaries. Well, the federal government got this thing, and they took one look at it and found that it was costing them more a year for maintenance than they could spend on putting people just about any place else in the world. It was known affectionately as a white elephant. They wanted nothing to do with it. It was Nixon who was president at the time, and he flew in and looked around and was not impressed, and he says, "We don't want it." So then they had to get rid of it, and so it went back to the estate. The estate tried to, and the Marjorie Merriweather Post Foundation, the owners of it, they tried to give it to the state of Florida. Florida didn't want it. They tried to give it to Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County didn't want it. No one wanted to touch this thing because it was a white elephant. It was not worth anywhere close to what it would cost to maintain that thing on a yearly basis or by the minute. Along comes Donald Trump, and he bought the damn thing. But he bought it for nothing, because it was a white elephant. No one was willing to buy the damn thing because it was basically worthless. It was a money pit. And he paid, $5 million for the property, and then the whole package together was $10 million. And that whole package together included all the furnishings. So here's Donald Trump with this white elephant. And the thing that's kept the value down all these years was these airplanes flying over all day long. Go spend the night there sometime and tell me what kind of a great night's sleep you had. Fine for me, I grew up in a military base. But not so great for those of you who grew up in the nice cushy suburbs of Vermont. So, those would be the only suburbs that would qualify. Yes, nice and cushy. The rest of the suburbs in the country are not that nice and cushy. Vermont has outstanding suburbs, which we can talk about at another day. And you don't believe me, do you? Well, go to Vermont sometime and visit somebody who lives in one of those Vermont suburbs. I have a cousin who does. I haven't gone there yet, but I'm going to, and is she going to be surprised when she comes home from work and finds me there with my dog? No. But we don't need to think ahead. Let's look backwards. I always like to look backwards instead of ahead. No good can come from looking forward. Only good comes from looking back, because all the mistakes you've made have already been made, and you don't have to worry about making them in the future. So Donald Trump made a big mistake. He bought this white elephant. So one of the first things that Donald Trump did was he called a meeting of his neighbors, one of whom was a very good friend of mine. And he invites them over for breakfast. And anytime Donald Trump would invite anybody to anything, I'll tell you about the club across the street from Mar-a-Lago that he wanted to join. I'll tell you about that later. So he invites my good friend and a bunch of other neighbors, and they all go over there, and they're all very wealthy people, and they all sit down for a breakfast at Donald Trump's expense. Hey, who says there's no such thing as a free meal? So the purpose of the breakfast, it turns out, was for Donald Trump. I'm petting my dog. I'm not falling over drunk. I'm petting my dog. He's falling over drunk. So he wants everybody to contribute to his fund to get the airport moved. And so I asked my friend, I said, well, how'd that go over? He said, well, everybody stifled their laughs until they got out in the parking lot. And he said, we all thought this guy was nuttier than a fruitcake. And I said, well, who contributed? He said, nobody contributed. That's his problem. They're flying right over, the flight path is right over his house, not mine, or anybody else's around there. That's his problem. He was a moron to buy the place in the first place. So that's one of my Donald Trump stories about Mar-a-Lago. And the other one was he wanted to join this club, and I want to say the Ocean Racket Club. It wasn't the Ocean Racket Club, but it was the Palm Beach Club or some damn thing like that. It's still there. And it's right catty corner, so there's a bend in the road there, a little curve. That's, this is A1A, and it comes down along. And I live right here near A1A, and my mother's house, my deceased mother's house, my house, that's also on A1A up north. So there's a lot of us along A1A, and so he's up there, living up there on Mar-a-Lago on A1A, and he has no access to the beach. Yeah, it just goes up to the road. Like my houses, you just go up to the road. They're not on the beach. I own a timeshare that's on the beach. As far as I know, that's the only place, all up and down the road here. I think there's a Hilton Hotel. No, even that's not on the beach. This timeshare is a pretty good deal. It's literally a 1.5 minute drive from my house, and it's right on the beach itself. So if I want to sit in a lounge chair or swim in a pool and be right on the beach, I can do it. Usually I just am too lazy to do it. But I wasn't that lazy when I bought the place last month. So, anyway, he wanted to join this club because it's a beach club. So he could go over there and have parties and entertain people and on the water, on the beach. Because at Mar-a-Lago, you're not on the water, you're not on the beach. You're on the intercoastal, but that's not a beach. So Donald Trump made his application, and then the board was supposed to meet, on a given date. He invites all the board members to spend the night at Mar-a-Lago. His expense, he flew them down, most of them from New York, flew them down, paid for everything, put them up in luxury, had a nice expensive meal. And again, with the expensive, this was a free dinner versus the free breakfast. There was no free lunch involved with Donald Trump. The next day, they all got up, shook his hands, thanked him profusely, went across the road, sat down, and unanimously voted to not allow him to join their club. So Donald Trump has had great luck with Mar-a-Lago, and now it looks like it may bankrupt him because he just can't help but lie about his worth. And the figure he puts on this thing that he got for $5 million and he's putting it at $1 billion. That's not what he told the judge. I think he told the judge $700 million. The judge said it was worth maybe $18 million, and from my perspective, that's generous. And it's also an old house. So, and he says, I heard him on the end. He says, well, Mar-a-Lago is worth more than just like a piece of real estate. It's like a Rembrandt. It's like a work of art. Well, it was like a Rembrandt and a work of art when he paid $5 million for it, and nobody else would buy it. So apparently that work of art, money advancement didn't really help much. And then the next thing he says, well, because I lived there and I was a president, it has my name. Well, his name isn't worth squat these days. And in fact, people are taking his name off every place they can. And it's too bad because actually he did have a great brand. And I'm an intellectual property lawyer. Part of what I do is I deal with branding issues and their worth and their value, and branding's values go up and they go down. In this case, they went up and then they went down. So it's really not. It's still something he probably couldn't sell. He can't give it away. There's no more reason any government would take it now than they would before because it still costs a fortune to keep up. So that's kind of the backstory of Mar-a-Lago. And every time I laugh, every time I read him talk about how, yes, I'm worth all this much money because I own Mar-a-Lago, it's like, really? Interesting concept. It's too bad that, I don't know, the facts don't bear you out. It seems to be kind of a recurring problem with my friend and neighbor, or ex-neighbor, I guess, Donald Trump, who, probably is quite charming. Although I've met him several times and he never impressed me as charming, but that was in the 70s. Maybe he's changed. He certainly has a lot of people believing in him. Ironically, those same people believe that Martians are living on the moon, and they may be right. Who knows? I don't know, and you sure as hell don't know, because if you knew anything, you wouldn't be watching this show. So I'm going to say goodbye and goodbye.